On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we'll be bringing in Hunter Hodies, the host of Locked On Penguins, to discuss how Sidney Crosby, Envgeni Malkin, and Kris Letang are still doing it for the Penguins. The 11-1-1 run that the Penguins have been on since November 17th, and we're going to give our predictions for Thursday night's game, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Pittsburgh Penguins. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers and Locked On Pittsburgh Penguins your first listen of the day. For everybody on the Penguins feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez, the host of Locked On Panthers. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. And thankful to be doing a crossover edition of the show with the host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. Hunter, great to be connecting with you prior to our game on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think we were talking before recording this. I think this is the first one that we've done for a Penguins-Panthers game, but consider how the three games went last year when they were probably the most fun games of the Penguin season. I hope that this one is just as fun, if not better.
Mm-hmm. And before we continue the conversation, we'd like to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered for all odds, props, and podcasts at BetOnline, where the game starts. And also, Hunter, I want to congratulate you on moving to the Pittsburgh area, the 412, and actually getting closer to the team. Of course, that's definitely going to help you, of course, with engaging with your listenership as well as being more closer to the team as well. Fun fact: did you know that there's a Primanti Bros in South Florida?
I did hear about that. Yes, I think it's near the arena, if I recall correctly.
It's near Fort Lauderdale Beach, which is on the other side of Broward County. So with the Panthers arena being on the western part of the county, Primanti Bros is closer to the beach. So never been to that one, but I've actually been to the Pittsburgh location. And if duplicating the Church Brew Works was possible, that would be amazing. But you can't duplicate something as great as that. If you have never been to Pittsburgh, for my listeners, please search the Church Brew Works. Great restaurant. I love it. But let's talk about this game on Thursday between the Panthers and the Penguins. It's funny because I was hosting the national show on November 17th with the host of Locked On Lightning, Adam Danker, and we were just talking about the power rankings at the time. It was the power rankings edition of the show, and I believe the Penguins were ranked either 6th or 7th at the time. But since that time, Hunter, the Penguins are 11-1-1. Tristan Jarry did not have the best start to the season, but man, what a turnaround he has had. Third in the Metro Division with Carolina having a game in hand. And what's been the biggest contributing factor to this 11-1-1 run for the Penguins?
Oops, almost just had myself on mute there for a second. This was a team that kind of lost its way, during the 7-game losing streak. It looked like things were dire, but a game against the Capitals will always wake you up, right? And ever since that, it snowballed into this massive run. They've also won 6 in a row. It's fun. You know what? I'm not going to jinx myself. I'm not going to say what I'm about to say because it's not going to, forget I even almost brought that up. But, I think a lot of things, they're really defending a lot harder than they used to. Their goals against average has gone way down compared to where it was in the 7-game losing streak. But it also kind of comes down to them getting better goaltending and the penalty kill really turning around, because during that losing streak, they were giving up a goal per game when they went down on the penalty kill. Tristan was below 900. Casey DeSmith wasn't playing well. They were giving up leads like it was nothing. Since then, the penalty kill, which was well below average, is top 5 in the league. Tristan Jarry has gone on a 930, 935 run. You combine those two things, the power play gets a little hot, and you get the finishing, and you see the makings of a really good team right now. And, they were scoring during that losing streak, and especially at 5v5, and the expected goals and all the underlying numbers were good. It just, they weren't getting the saves, and they were letting in goals on the man advantage every time. But they were able to clean some stuff up, and they're finally showing, just how good they can be. And I think another big thing is Sidney Crosby has awoken yet again this season. He's probably going to break Wayne Gretzky's record of the most consecutive seasons of being a point per game. Right now, he is probably in my top 3 candidates for the Hart Trophy. He is, as far as, he will take this team. How do I want to say this? As the Penguins go, he goes. And I say that for him. I say that for Gino, and I say that for Tanger because, they've been here for the longest out of anyone. But it really is truly true in Crosby form. But it's been great to watch this team really turn it around over the last month. Heck, again, even the power play is on a nice hot streak right now. 5 or 6 games in a row that they've scored a power play goal. They haven't done that since March. Also, as long as they have Mike Sullivan behind the bench, this team always has a chance. But, things look bad for a while, late August into early November. But, ever since that game against Washington, all they had to do was play your rival. It's just been a different team. They're defending a lot better. The penalty kill's been more aggressive. They've been getting the saves. And, they were trusting the process and hoping that it was going to turn around. And it did in a big way. And I think you're seeing, again, the makings of a really strong team. I don't know how far they can go. I don't know if this is a cup team, but I think this is a team that can, when they're playing like this, they can do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. And Sidney Crosby, 31 of his 38 points are coming on even strength. Him, Jason Robertson, and Connor McDavid are really the 3 players you think of first when it comes to candidates for the Hart Trophy. And I mean, it's crazy to think that you pointed out with the power play scoring 5 of their last 6, even though their percentage is like 23rd in the league. So it just goes to show how early numbers early performance can really skew numbers. So I believe that will get higher as the season goes for the Pens. And I mean, I'm also looking at Hockey Reference as well for Pittsburgh. And I mean, and the time on ice for Sidney Crosby and Gino doesn't have to be so stretched out because of the fact that they don't play penalty kill minutes neither. And you're seeing guys step up big time, even strength. Jan Ruda, Pierre-Olivier Joseph are some of the top players in goals against per 60 minutes as well. So you're getting that contribution on both sides of the puck, and even on shorthanded. I mean, Philip Holland, excuse me, not he's only played 2 games. Sorry. Teddy Bluger is one that's been has logged a lot of minutes as well on the PK as well, and Marcus Pettersson as well. So it's been multiple guys doing, even though they're not playing top 6 roles. I've seen it based on Hockey Reference, different players contributing to different things. I mean, that bottom 6 defensively, it matches up really well against some other teams in the league.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed out POJ. He has just been a great player for this team this season. I didn't have the highest expectations for him because I thought Ty Smith should have made this team out of camp. He was really good in the practices that were shown to everyone on social media and the preseason games that I watched. I thought he was a better defenseman, but POJ, they were kind of dangling him at the start, but they took a gamble on him, and it's working out right now. He just scored his 2nd career NHL goal on Monday night. His defending has gotten a lot better, and he's also producing the offense. And I was never really concerned with his defense because that's kind of been his strong suit coming up from the AHL, coming up from junior hockey. I was just concerned about the offense, but he's quarterbacking the 2nd power play right now. That's going to be his job for at least the next month because Jeff Petrie is out longer term. That was confirmed today or on Wednesday, by Mike Sullivan. Same thing with Jason Zucker. He is week to week, which absolutely stinks. But POJ has been one of their best defensemen this season, and I think he's definitely earned the right to have more minutes. Glad you also mentioned Teddy Bluger. He has been great since coming back from that nagging lower body injury that made him miss kind of the first month of the season. He really gels that penalty killing unit together. Part of that, the struggles were because they were without him, but they were starting to turn it around even before he did come back. It's just, his emergence with his comeback just makes it that much better. And Yarmuta, he's been solid as well. The bottom six, for the most part, I think has been okay this season. I really like the fourth line when healthy. You can roll out Archibald down there, who has 4 to 5 goals. Ryan Paling's not playing too bad. Again, Teddy Bluger. It's really just that third line that I think is just kind of a little bit of a wreck. And I don't really know what Jeff Carter does these kind of days. And him playing with Kasperi Kapanen is just, I don't know. Kapanen has just been up and down. And then Brock McGinn, when he's not scoring, even though he is on a nice stretch right now, he's not doing too much on that third line with Carter. But I do think it's kind of more so Carter is bad than anyone else. But yeah, I mean, this team has really good metrics overall. And, defensively, that's not their bread and butter, but Mike Sullivan will obviously take what he can get, because this team has shown that they can play low scoring games. They did just that against the Dallas Stars on Monday. And a lot of the role players this year, or at least some of them, have been better than even I expected them to be.
Mm-hmm. Last question before we transition is gotta talk about Kris Letang and everything that happened with him a few weeks ago, suffering his second stroke and coming back so soon. I'm not sure exactly how many days he missed, but I'm not someone to tell somebody what they should do with their body. And even if something happens again, I don't want to be the "I told you so" person for this person. I believe people should learn lessons on their own as well. And regardless of whether people agree that he should play so soon, but how is the fan base feeling about Kris Letang's just overall health?
I mean, it's hard to not be at least a little worried / concerned, everything else in between. Because he only missed less than 2 weeks with that stroke. The doctors even said that this one was a lot less severe than the first one that made him miss up to a couple of months. And I agree with you, Armando. I'm not going to be someone to tell a professional athlete how to handle their bodies. Kris Letang knows his body better than anyone. He has been through this before. I understand that some people distrust doctors, for whatever reason. But, if Letang says he's good to go, I have to trust that. He would not be on the ice right now if he was not 100% healthy and was not 100% feeling good, just because, he knows what happened with the last one. He knows, or at least everyone has been told, that this is not going to, make him have another one. It doesn't really, just because of what we learned 8 years ago, the hole in his heart is going to be closing over time. But, it's still hard. I was at the game on Monday, and, I saw him take a couple of cross checks to the back. It was slow to get up. And it's hard not to look at that. And it's like, are you okay? Just to take it easy a little bit. But he's someone that he wants to go to 0 to 100 so quick. And he's already leading the team in ice time 2 games after coming back. It's like, Kris, they're trying to insert you a little slower. You can take a chill pill a little bit, but that's just not who he is. I mean, he even said to the media, he said, it's going to take a lot more than this to get me away from the game. So he loves hockey. I mean, I was concerned about his 2 kids, his wife, his friends, just because he has a loving family and so many great people around him. But, if he says he's all right, then, I gotta trust that he's making the right decision. But, I was even surprised that he was back early. I was thinking the Winter Classic on January 2nd, by the way he was skating, by the way he was talking. I did not think it was going to be on the second night of back-to-back. I'll say that. So, I'm obviously still concerned. It's something that's very serious, because this is the second time it's happened. But again, if he says he's okay, and the doctors who have been there for the last 8 to 9 years have been there around him, and they say it's okay, I'm gonna trust that decision, and just hope beyond hope that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and definitely if he feels that he's okay, we gotta definitely trust him. That's for sure. But we're gonna transition over to segment number 2, where we're gonna flip the script to Hunter to ask me some Florida Panthers related questions before this matchup on Thursday night. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, college bowl season, basketball, and the World Cup. And the World Cup final is now set between Argentina and France. And we've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today. Use multiple sites to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, so we're back here on this very special crossover with myself, Hunter Hodies, the host of Locked On Penguins, and Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers. So Armando, definitely a bit of a sluggish start, I would say, for the Panthers this season. I was talking about this on my show on Tuesday. It was just looking ahead to the match, just because the Penguins have a couple of off days here, and it's hard to go from one season you're just averaging 4 goals a game, and then that regresses just because. And I was kind of saying, maybe it's because of Paul Maurice was hired, and he's not that run and gun type coach that Andrew Burnett was, or before then, Joe Quenneville, before everything happened with Kyle Beach when he had to resign. But what has really been the main reason for why this team is out of a playoff spot right now? I was maybe thinking it was because Sergei Bobrovsky's been really bad yet again. Are they really missing Huberdeau and Weegar? Just what has really stood out to you with why this team has been struggling to get results this year compared to last year, Armando, when they were running through the league in the regular season?
It's crazy because the Florida Panthers started 4-1-1 on the season, and the Panthers, we were for the first 2 weeks of the season, we were saying, oh, the defense is the least of the Panthers' problems. It's now the scoring that's the issue. The Panthers can't get goals, and they were losing games to Arizona. They were losing games to Chicago, even with putting up a lot of shots. Philadelphia is one of them as well. Columbus, the first go round just 3 weeks ago, which the Florida Panthers were just recently faced again and shut them out. But then it all flipped on its head for the Panthers. Now it was the Panthers power play was starting to get going, and then it was the defense for the Panthers that was starting to get that was starting to not perform up to par, and of course goaltending as well. I mean, with and Aaron Ekblad has regressed a little bit, even though he had a great night on Tuesday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We saw Aaron Ekblad back to what we know who Aaron Ekblad is as a hockey player. But Sergei Bobrovsky, it's just been at the beginning of the season, he's been a little bit not reliable after the second week of the season, and Spencer Knight had to. He at one point was getting more starts than Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, there's sometimes where he would go like 9 days without starting. And then the one game that he had in Calgary, I mean, the Panthers just didn't show up in that one, and that was Matthew Tkachuk's return to the Saddle Dome too. And what a game to just it being over from the start for the Panthers during that. But the numbers won't necessarily say it from Sergei Bobrovsky's start last Thursday against Detroit to now, but he's been pretty great. And he was the least of the Panthers' issues of why they lost to Tampa Bay and the Seattle Kraken over the weekend. The Panthers were just stuck in their own zone. They were just and Paul Maurice had a very animated moment. Paul Maurice is known as a very even-keeled guy. Very, very, very cool, calm, collected. But he called a rare timeout in the middle of the second period when the Panthers were just having a hard time exiting the zone, and he was just giving it to his team. I wonder how many F-bombs there were there. It didn't necessarily work for that game, but man, I think about I wonder when it comes to turnarounds for after something that happened like that on Sunday, and I spoke about this on my show on Tuesday. But when they have a big lead, they weren't letting it off the gas neither against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They were up 3-0, and they were still having such a sense of urgency. And that is the type of Paul Maurice game that he wants to bring for this Panthers team. And yeah, it's against Columbus. They're last in the NHL. It's like I've said, it's not sunshine and rainbows after a win like that, but if you can show those signs of that type of performance, then this team will be. I think that this team will be okay in the long run, because this was never going to be President's Trophy Florida Panthers coming into this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to repeat that kind of season again. You're averaging 4 goals a game. You're just this offensive juggernaut. You had some losses over the offseason. And speaking of that, obviously, Armando, you had one of probably the biggest trade of the offseason, getting Matthew Tkachuk, who the Penguins will have to see not once, not twice as before, but 3 times every season now. And, I can't get enough of watching Tkachuk. I think he's one of the most fun players to watch in the league. Yeah, he pisses you off, but I mean, I would probably have 100 of those players on my team with how talented he is. He comes over, Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau go out. What have you seen so far in Tkachuk that makes you feel, pretty good about the trade, or, you're still feeling a little bit neutral? Just, how would you analyze it so far? Because, when I do look at, Florida's defense, especially, Forsling had a good year last year. I think he rotated between playing with Ekblad and Weegar, if I'm not mistaken. But, Ekblad is obviously great, but after that, though, I look at that defense and I'm like, man, it's just, it just doesn't feel as deep, obviously, without Weegar being there, because his numbers were so good. What have you, seen from Tkachuk so far since the trade, and how do you feel about it, like, at least right now?
Yeah, and Mackenzie Weegar was always going to be seen as a rental for this year, even if they never made that trade, because of all the cap problems that the Florida Panthers were going to have in this season, and still not knowing what it's going to look like. The Board of Governors meeting, I believe it just ended in Florida, and Gary Bettman put out a negotiation tactic saying, I don't know if it's going to be raised more than $1 million to $83.5 million, but I think that's more of a sign of a message to the NHLPA to pony up and negotiate. Who knows? But with that and the age of Matthew Tkachuk and how contracts get towards the end for older players, of Jonathan Huberdeau was going to enter into his 30s when that contract began, and Mackenzie Weegar, he was in the same draft as Alexander Barkov, so it accelerates their championship window for getting Tkachuk, instead of it being a 1 to 2 year thing. And the Panthers, if they sign both Weegar and Huberdeau, which was going to be hard to do, then these next 2 years were going to be your only years to do it, and then the lack of draft capital they already had, and then shipping out even more, you're gonna screw over your future anyway. But you see the Tkachuk factor. He's making that the cap hit is less. It matches the years with Barkov too, which helps, and just a different dimension. I mean, the amount of backdoor passes that you see from behind the net, it's just a different game versus Huberdeau always being on the perimeter and setting people up. Of course, after the whistle as well for Matthew Tkachuk, which is just something that this team needs. I mean,
he's an enigma.
Yeah, definitely. And he broke the franchise record for most points through 25 games to start a season to start their tenure with the Panthers. So even though the team success isn't there, the individual success right there is there for Matthew Tkachuk. He's on pace right now for 106 points. I just calculated that yesterday. So and his career high was at 104. He's doing just fine. So I'm very pleased with that part of the trade. And of course, with the cap space that now the Florida Panthers will have from not having Weegar, that can give them an opportunity to either sign or trade someone younger who the contract could possibly age even better than what Weegar's could possibly be.
That does make sense. And at the time, I thought it looked kind of good for both sides, because the Flames, they had lost Gaudreau. It looked like Tkachuk didn't want to be there anymore. So like, okay, we're going to try to get the best return for them that we can. And, I thought they did pretty good with that, even though they probably lost the best player. But, he has been electric this season, Tkachuk. Last thing I do want to get into, though, Armando, I know you touched on Sergei Bobrovsky a little bit just a couple minutes ago. Do you think there's like a small goaltending controversy there, just with Spencer Knight's numbers being a lot better right now compared to Bobrovsky's? And I was looking at Money Puck, looking at, goals saved above expected, save percentage, expected goals against and stuff. But I also looked at, it kind of looks like they've split the games this season, like right down the middle. I think Knight got 15, Bobrovsky's got 16. Are they just looking for someone to take the net there, or is this just a pure 1A, 1B situation?
It's it's funny because Spencer Knight has missed the last 4 games due to a non-COVID illness. And he was starting actually more games than Sergei Bobrovsky, and it's just at this point, it's just whoever's performing better is going to start. That's really what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what the cap hit. It doesn't matter what the cap hit. Whoever is the better goalie and gives them the best chance to win is going to start, because this team can't tank, because their team is their pick this year is unprotected to the Montreal Canadiens. So tanking is out of the question for this Florida Panthers team. Who is going to give this team the best chance to win? Which guy is going to give them the best chance to win? And Spencer Knight is actually good to go to at least be the backup tomorrow versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's a lot of injury updates actually for the Panthers. Patrick Hornquist is actually on LTIR. He won't be his first game he will be able to be back will be December 29th. Colin White's day to day. Anton Lundell has missed the last 6 games. Gudis hasn't played since he suffered a concussion against the Seattle Kraken, and which was the same game that Patrick Hornquist suffered a concussion. Carter Verhaeghe missed Tuesday game with a non-COVID illness, so we might see Sergei Bobrovsky for one more game before Spencer Knight starts a game again, and that will be. It doesn't get easier for the Panthers because after they play the Pittsburgh Penguins on Thursday, they got to travel to New Jersey to play the Devils. Then they're back at home against the Boston Bruins, the Devils again, and then the Islanders before the Christmas break. But good news, even though the Islanders are in a playoff spot right now, the Panthers have already beaten them twice, and it was very early in the season where of course the Islanders were getting accumulated to a new coaching staff, just like the Panthers, but they've already gotten their number twice, and it's just they're one of 3 teams who haven't gone on a 3-game winning streak this season. Them, Columbus, and Anaheim. So you're gonna have to come up with wins here and there, and it doesn't get easier on Thursday night against Pittsburgh. But I think it's going to be Sergei Bobrovsky in between the pipes, just to at least get Spencer Knight skating a little more before starting again.
That makes sense. And, the Penguins, they have a pretty good history, usually against Sergei Bobrovsky. He usually just does not like playing the Penguins. I mean, it's almost every game, I feel like. But especially back when he was in Columbus, I felt like he would give up 3-4 goals a game. Last couple of seasons, it's been a little bit better. But, the Penguins they seem to play usually pretty well against him. So I guess that kind of favors them there. But it sounds like, at least to me, that once Knight is fully healthy, he might be getting more of the starts once he's, fully skating and all that. But that wraps up, it looks like, this part of the segment. Coming up to fully end the show, we're going to get our predictions and our keys for each team to win, as this is the first of 3 meetings. But before we get to that, so let's just get into this. So say you're hanging out with some friends, you're putting back a few drinks, but a few becomes too many as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride. Now you live nearby. You can make it at home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job, your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, especially with New Year's coming up in just a few weeks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, third and final segment of this crossover edition of Locked On Florida Panthers and Locked On Penguins. Thank you for making both of our podcasts your first listen of the day. Hunter, so like we spoke about pre-recording, this will be the first matchup between the Panthers and the Penguins at FLA Live Arena since the Panthers home opener last season, where overtime win. We spoke about the Bobrovsky save on Jeff Carter, where Carter Verhaeghe took it by himself to beat Casey DeSmith there, which I was
great game.
I was there in person. Very fun atmosphere at FLA Live Arena. Who would have thought that was the beginning of something great that season? But I'm trying to have a zero expectations approach for the Panthers, as just as just we've just seen so many up and downs for the Cats, and I believe that for this one, especially with how we spoke about in segment number 1 about the different players just playing really key roles defensively for the Penguins on the penalty kill, and as well, I mean, their penalty kill has been fantastic. Keys to the game for the Panthers: get a power play goal or two, and just try to beat Tristan Jarry. I'm assuming that he's going to be starting this game, but I'm not very confident that they'll come out with a win on Thursday night, even though it's at home. It still with Tuesday's game, they beat a team that they were supposed to. And plenty of times this season, they've beaten teams that they were supposed to. Seattle, Vancouver, just on their most recent West Coast trip, but they've also dropped a few to teams that you're just scratching your head. And just the run that the Penguins are on, getting points in all their last 7 games, only 1 overtime loss there, and then winning 6 in a row, the 11-1-1 like we spoke about at the very beginning. I'm gonna put pen in the Pittsburgh Penguins to win on Thursday night. I'm gonna say by a final score of I'm gonna say that this is a 2-1 Penguins win. I'm going to say low scoring. I'm going to go with low scoring, and Bobrovsky is actually going to continue to at least give a little glimmer of hope that his time with Florida can still be a little salvaged.
Okay, I like that. It goes against how the 3 meetings last year went with how high scoring they were, but it is a bit different now with Paul Maurice running the show rather than Andrew Brunette. I think for the Penguins, they've done a really good job of shutting down the opposition's best players over these last few games, especially during the 6-game winning streak. They had that back-to-back against Buffalo, right? Tage Thompson coming off the 5-goal game.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, he's killed the Penguins over the years. Coming into that game, Armando, he had 5 goals in 8 games against them. Thinking, okay, probably going to score a couple. Nope, had 1 assist in the 2 games. They had someone on him every time he came into the offensive zone. Monday against Dallas, Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Joe Pavelski, one of the best top lines in the league. Jason Robertson, nope, nothing. He didn't really do anything. Rupe Hintz scored 19 seconds in. Penguins last 59 minutes and 41 seconds, they shut out everyone on that Stars team. They've been doing a really good job of taking away the opposition's best player. Obviously, the big focal point will be Matthew Tkachuk. It will be Sasha Barkov, who I love watching. I think I said on my Tuesday episode, Armando, I think he's one of the best two-way centers in the league, and he can do it all. So I think they're going to have, all their eyes on both of those players. But I think another big key for them is, continuing with that stretch on the penalty kill and the power play. Special teams. The PK, it's back in the top 5, but the Panthers, they got a lot of talent up there. They can throw out Barkov, Reinhart, Tkachuk, Ekblad on their top unit. Those are 4 very talented players. They can put whoever else they want on that 5th one. I believe I saw last time it's Montour that's getting the minutes up there, Armando, or they might just be flipping back and forth. But
it's Montour, Ekblad, Rhino, Tkachuk, Barkov on that top unit.
Yeah, and obviously at least 4 of those guys, amazing puck movers. Montour's, he's more known, I would say, for his defense, I think, but he can still boom it with a shot. So the Penguins are going to have to be on high alert for that. Tristan Jarry, he's really turned it around. Want to see another strong performance, and I think he will start. But also, how are the Penguins going to navigate through another small injury stretch here? The Penguins, funny enough, just a couple weeks ago, they played their first fully healthy game with the lineup in over a year. They've had they've had a full injury curse throughout the entire Sid Gino era, and it's starting to come up here yet again. Jeff Petrie, he's out longer term. That means, POJ is going to move up. Brian Newman's going to get more minutes. He struggled a bit this year. Jan Ruta. Jason Zucker, who has had a magnificent start to the season on Evgeni Malkin's line. He is week to week. He got hurt in the Monday game, limped down the tunnel at the end of the second period, came back, finished the game. Everyone's like, oh, okay, he's fine. Nope, he's not, because in typical Penguins fashion, a player gets hurt, comes back to play, probably injures himself more, and now he's out for a longer period of time. This is how it goes for the Penguins. In his place, I think it's going to be Danton Heinen, someone who hasn't been playing as much just because he's been struggling. They're still deep at forward, but with Zucker not being there, it hurts, to say the least. He's been awesome. I was hoping that he wasn't going to get hurt this season, but it's just it stings. But again, special teams would like Tristan Jarry to keep up his good form, and the Penguins want to play that defensive game. They don't mind. They did it against Dallas, and Peter DeBoer, his teams, they're a little more offensive than the Stars team they had last year with Rick Bowness, but they can also play sound defensively as well. I'm going to predict this winning streak goes to 7. I think it's going to be a 3-2 final in favor of the Penguins. I do think Bob is going to play a bit better than he's done it in Columbus, especially against the Penguins. But I do think in the end, it's not going to be enough. I do think the Penguins get this win heading into Raleigh. And I also really want to see how the power play plays as well, because it's been a lot hotter as of late. And hopefully we can get a goal from the fourth line, because that's gone a little cold, just a little bit lately. I'm not going to rely on the fourth line to score, every other game or something like that. But once every couple weeks or once every week and a half would be good at this point. But I do have the Penguins winning 3-2 in a very highly contested game here.
Definitely. And if that trend continues from last season, no surprises there. And one more thought: if the Jack Adams Trophy was actually awarded to the coach that has done the best job versus not discrediting other Jack Adams Trophy winners, but versus expectations versus exceeding them, Mike Sullivan would have had more than one already. And I just want to tell your listeners that Mike Sullivan is very deserving of that award. It's just based on how people view that award. And he's coached on international teams as well, Team USA as well. So definitely a great a battle of two coaches too, of two guys who have been around the block for this team. So definitely going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, the Jack Adams for me is always like, oh, what has your goaltending done for me lately? I feel like that's just how it's going every year at this point. It is criminal that he hasn't won one. I think he's a top 3 coach in the league, but it always comes down to with also some of these voters. But they have Sidney Crosby, they have Envgeni Malkin. Okay, but what about when they don't have them during stretches of the season, like last year when they had a whole COVID outbreak? Gino missed the first half of the season. Crosby also missed time with a wrist injury. Oh, they went on a long winning streak, and he got them, into a top 3 spot in the Metropolitan Division. So, it's I lose track with the Jack Adams stuff. Hopefully one day he'll win it, but I think most people in this fan base, and I know a lot of people around the league, think that he is one of the best coaches in the league.
Kind of because this is a South Florida podcast on my side, we could actually relate it to the NBA team in South Florida, Eric Spoelstra. He's never won a Coach of the Year because they have LeBron, because they've had D Wade, Bosch, and all that. So it's a good comparable, at least in my opinion. But Hunter, I want to thank you for joining me on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Penguins. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies. You can follow the show's Twitter at @LRorsfor Penguins. You can get the Locked On Penguins podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. There's an ad-free version on Amazon now, if I'm not mistaken. So if any of you Panthers fans want to listen to a show about the Pittsburgh Penguins, that's where you can find it. But I'll turn it over to you, Armando, for if any of my listeners want to hear you talk about the fancy cats.
They can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at @LO_FLA Panthers, and anywhere you listen to podcasts, and yes, Amazon as well. Forget that's a new thing here, but yeah, ad free on Amazon Music with your Prime subscription. So, Hunter, I want to thank you once again, and good luck tonight.
Yeah, good luck. This should be a great game.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to the shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today gives you a 20-minute or less podcast on the entirety of the sports scene with exclusive interviews and the take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Hunter Hodies. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.